Hey guys, welcome back. I'm Jacqueline and today I'm going to be continuing my tutorial on creating an Asteroids game in Unity 2D. So this time we're going to be going over shooting and getting the player so that it can instantiate some bullets and eventually kill some asteroids. So let's get started. So you'll want to navigate to your assets folder. You'll see these three folders that we have here. We're going to create a new folder and we're going to call it prefabs. The prefabs folder is where you save game objects that you're going to be instantiating, and this is where we're going to be putting our bullet. So first, before we can do anything with our bullet, we need to get it set up. So we need to go to our sprites folder, PNG, and then we're going to go to our lasers folder, and here you'll see a ton of different lasers. I am just going to grab a simple blue laser, so it's the second one here, and drag it into my scene. Next, I am going to rename it to bullet. Right, and then you'll see that it's right here. It's kind of behind the camera, so if you want, you can move that out so you can see it. That's fine. And then what we want to do is add a couple of components. So click on your bullet in the hierarchy, and then hit Add Component. First thing we want to add is a rigid body 2D. And then here you'll have the gravity scale. We just want to set that down to 0. And then we're going to add another component, and this is going to be a capsule collider 2D. It should go straight to the size of your bullet. If it doesn't, you can click this button here and adjust that by hand if you need to. Awesome. So once you have that on there, we are almost good to go. We just need to create a script for our bullet, and then we're going to work on the logic for instantiating it. So first we want to go to our scripts folder, right click, create C# script, and we're going to call this one bullet. And we're going to open that up in Visual Studio. Awesome. Once you've gotten this far, we are going to delete the update function. We will not need it. I am going to keep the start, but I'm going to delete this comment because I just hate that one. And we're going to do all of our logic here in our start function. So we do need a couple of variables though. So the first one that we need is our rigid body 2D that we added to the bullet. So we're just going to do private rigid body 2D, and then I always call mine body 2D. It's unoriginal, I know, but it's fine. It's fairly descriptive. The main thing that you want to keep in mind when naming your variables is that it's something recognizable and meaningful to you, so that way when you come back to read your code, you can figure out what you were trying to do and what it's supposed to be doing or holding. Awesome. So now that we have our rigid body 2D up there, we also need a public float, and this is going to be our push force. It's essentially the bullet speed. This is how much force we're going to be pushing the bullet upon instantiation. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit more about that in a second, but we do need that. And I think that's everything we need. In our start function, we are going to get the rigid body 2D. So we're going to say body 2D equals get component, and then rigid body 2D. Yep. Okay. And all that's doing is getting the component off of the same game object. So it's going to just look on the game object that this script is on and look for the rigid body 2D. And we're going to save it because we need to use it in order to get our bullet moving. So first thing that we're going to do after that is say body 2D dot add force, and then we want to do this in it needs to know which direction we want to push it in and how fast or by how much we want to push it. So I'm going to go to Unity here. I'm going to click on my bullet, and if these handles are, like the move handles are not visible, you can press W. And I want to move it in the forward direction. So that's going to be up. So going back to Visual Studio, inside these two parentheses next to my add force, I am going to type transform.up times push force. Okay, and that is everything that we're going to need in here. So I'm just going to comment these. So get rigid body from game object. And then this one, just recapping, is add force to the bullet. And this is just going to push the bullet forward. Awesome. So once we have this, we can actually test it out immediately. We just need to go back to Unity, click on our bullet, and then we're going to drag the bullet script into the inspector on the Add Component button, and that should add it. And then let's give it a push force of 70. That should probably be fine. Hopefully it won't be too fast. All right, so if you hit play, once you've gotten that far, and you'll see that your bullet is traveling up your screen. If not, make sure that you check this and then double check that you are adding your force, you're doing your transform.up. So if it's going a weird direction, just try changing this to right. That may, or negative for down. It just depends on how yours is set up. But if you're doing it exactly like me, this should work. Awesome. So now that we have that, we are going to save our bullet as a prefab. So if you go to your assets folder, you'll see the 4 folders that we have. Double click into prefabs and then just drag your bullet from the hierarchy straight into your prefab folder down here. And then you'll see your bullet in there. So this is bullet, and you'll see a little picture of what your bullet looks like. And then just to confirm that this is a prefab, you'll see that this has changed to blue instead of the black that it was before. This means it is successfully saved as a prefab, so we can actually delete this out of our scene now. All right, and now all we have to do is get our shooting logic set up on our player. So if you just double click onto your player, you can click here where it says player controller to open up your player controller script, or you can go to your scripts folder and double click it here. So I usually go like this, just a little easier for me. Awesome. So what we're going to do next is we're going to, underneath our transform.rotate, we're going to add an if statement to check if the player has pressed the shoot button. So in our case, we're going to just do spacebar. So input.get key down, get key down, key code. So key code, capital K, capital C, dot space. And then you'll need your closing parenthesis and then add your brackets. So if the player presses the space key, then we want to shoot our bullet, right? All right, so in order to do that, we're going to just instantiate the bullet. But there's a couple things that we need to set up before we can do this. So up here in your global variables, you'll need to just hit the enter key a few times. I'm going to add a header here just so it's more organized in the inspector. This will be a public transform. This is going to be our shoot point, which we will need to add to our player in Unity. We'll do that later. And then a public game object bullet prefab. And this is just a reference to the prefab that we made just a couple minutes ago. Okay, when you have both of those, you're ready to keep going. So in here, inside our get key down check, we're going to instantiate our bullet. So we're going to type in instantiate. And then to instantiate something, you need like 3 things. You need to know what to instantiate. So this is going to be our bullet prefab. Next, you need to know where to instantiate it. So this is going to be our shoot point dot transform dot position. And then finally, which rotation we want it to be aligned with. In our case, we're going to do shoot point dot transform dot rotation. Awesome. So once we have this, our bullet will instantiate and our bullet script will take over, so our bullet will move away from the player. Cool. So you can save this and then we'll go back to Unity and set up our shoot point. So all you need to do is click on your player in your hierarchy, right click and add an empty game object. This will create a child game object called game object. We're going to rename it. So you can right click rename or press F2, and I'm going to call this shoot point. I like to keep my variable names and my game object names fairly similar if I can, just so I can, it helps me organize and not get confused when I'm working on things. So that's a great habit to get into. But once you have that renamed, if you click it, you'll see that it's sitting right here in the middle of your player. We just want to drag it up to be somewhat in front of your player here. This is where the bullet will instantiate, so we don't want it too far away, but we don't want it too close either, because we don't want the bullet to hit the player at all, because once we get health in and stuff, hitting the bullet will harm the player. So we want to make sure that that's far enough away from the player that the bullet won't hit them. But once we have that, we're pretty much ready to go. Last step is to click on the player parent object and add the shoot point and bullet prefab. So you want to just drag the shoot point from the hierarchy into this box here, and then also go to your prefabs folder, and that will likely change the inspector to something else. So just make sure you click back onto your player, and then drag your bullet from your prefabs folder onto the bullet prefabs bot. Okay, so once you have both of those in, you can hit save, and then we can test it out. So I'm going to hit play, and I can still move, I can still rotate, but the big test is to press space, and I can shoot. So I can shoot unlimited amounts of times right now, which is fine, but we're going to make it so that it is kind of on a timer, so we can't just spam spacebar. So instead, we're going to have a shoot timer, and we're going to give the bullet a set time to destroy itself, so we don't have a million bullets in our scene at any given time. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is just fix the bullet so it destroys itself. We're going to just open up the bullet script, and in start, after we add force, we're just going to say destroy this dot game object, and then a comma, and then this is how long we're going to wait to destroy the bullet. So I'm just going to say we're going to create a variable destroy public float destroy delay. Okay, and then I'm going to stick it in here. And the reason that we're creating a variable for this is so we can set it in the inspector instead of just having the number here. This allows us to change it if we need to while we're working in Unity, which makes it a lot easier, and then instead of having to come back into the code and search for it and change it. I know with 3 lines of code in here, it's really not that difficult to find, but this is a really good habit to get into moving forward. So we're going to save that. So now if you go back to Unity, your bullet script should have a sorry, go to click on my bullet. Your bullet should have a destroy delay. I'm just gonna set it to 5. That should probably be fine for now. I'm gonna set this one to be ×2, so 140. So you'll see that after 5 seconds they get destroyed from our scene. So if you watch the hierarchy, you'll see them disappear. There we go. Alright, so that's working, and then finally we're going to set up our timer for shooting. So we're going to go into our player controller, and inside here we're going to, under the shooting header, we're going to add a public float shoot delay. Okay, and then also a private float, and I'm just going to call that one timer. Perfect. So what we want to do is inside our if statement here, we're going to check if timer, well actually we're going to also do a boolean, a private boolean called can shoot. And that's just going to let us know if we can shoot. Cool. So at the very top here above where we're checking our input, I'm just going to add a if statement. So if timer is less than 0, I guess less than or equal to 0, we're going to set can shoot equal to true. And then inside our down here inside our if statement, checking if we can press the button to shoot, we're going to say if can shoot, and then we're going to cut and paste this into that if statement. Okay, and then underneath our instantiate, we're going to set can shoot equal to false, because if we can shoot, then we want to get rid of that. We also want to set timer equal to shoot delay. Awesome. Here, if timer is less than or equal to 0, we're saying can shoot is true, but we're going to add an else to that, and then we're going to say timer minus equals time dot delta time. Okay, so if its timer is more than 0, then we're going to subtract time from it. Okay, so saving this, and then go back to Unity, and then we can unplay and try again. So 1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi. Oh, there we go. So if I spam, you'll see that I can only shoot every 2 seconds. So yay. And then this is probably something that's more appropriately to like, you can see that changing the, it changes the speed at which we can shoot. So perfect. So make sure to save that, and I want to thank you so much for watching. I hope that you learned a lot. Please feel free to add any comments or questions that you have below. I'll try to get back to you as soon as I can. Until then, if you like this video, please hit the like button and also subscribe. Next time, we're going to be working on creating our asteroids and getting them moving toward the player, as well as spawning them into the scene. Right, so I will see you next time, and thank you so much for watching.